I am the only daughter in a New York family. Because my family didn't want me to marry far away, I married an excellent local professor. One day, I found out that I was pregnant. But my husband had long made an agreement with me not to have children within 3 years for the sake of career development. So I planned to keep the baby and get divorced. I'm getting divorced. This very afternoon. The process of me being with him was simple blind date. Falling in love. Meeting the parents. And getting married. Actually, we didn't really fall in love in the true sense. It was just that our parents were in a hurry, and we each got what we needed. I'm a finance person in a foreign-funded enterprise. And he is a university professor. Both of us have very decent jobs. We don't know each other very deeply. We didn't even go on dates many times before getting the marriage certificate. After getting married, we began to try to gradually get along. But it seems that we don't have much time to communicate. Every time I was free and wanted to have a talk, he would always leave home saying he had something to do. At first, I thought he really had unfinished business. Later, I found out that he didn't seem to be handling any business but went out to parties. It was said that some bright and flamboyant female college students often patronized those parties. And these were not within my scope of interference. Although we often slept in the same bed at night, our souls didn't match. I often thought, maybe I can't find a soul mate in this life anyway. So I might as well muddle along. Anyway, the man in front of me is quite good-looking and talented. Maybe we could have a plot like in a novel where we fall in love after marriage. We had an agreement. Both of us had just entered the rising period of our careers. So we would not have children temporarily within 3 years. I quickly forgot about what happened that night. After all, it was just a slightly different experience in a calm life. And there was nothing worth lingering on. But I began to gradually feel the changes in my body. I began to become sleepy. In the past, I always read novels and watched videos until after 12 o'clock before going to bed. But slowly I began to feel sleepy at 10 o'clock. I became more easily fatigued. Although the work of corporate finance doesn't require calculation all the time, I gradually couldn't bear the original workload. Sunday evenings were the days when I went back to my parents' home every week. Sometimes he would accompany me home, but most of the time he wouldn't. Every time I told my parents, I came directly after shopping with my sisters, and didn't call him. My parents would nag a little every time. But it was just nagging. And they didn't take any other actions. My parents were very satisfied with him as a professor. Because I, who grew up in a well-off family, married a local husband of equal social status. His mother died early. And his father had been doing research abroad all year round. So he didn't interfere too much in our lives. I didn't even have to deal with the mother-in-law-daughter-in-law relationship. My parents were full of praise for this marriage. This week, as usual, I opened the door at home with fingerprint recognition. Mom was busy in the kitchen. And Dad was sitting at the dining table helping Mom prepare the dishes. When they saw me back, they beamed with joy. But then they still asked, "Thaddeus didn't come back with you?" I didn't know how to answer. So I just said, "He has something to do." Dad immediately frowned. What can a professor have to do on a Sunday? He doesn't even want to accompany his wife back to her parents' home. I was too tired to refute, and didn't say anything more. This little incident passed just like that. At the dinner table, the sweet and sour fish and the scallops with vermicelli and minced garlic, which I used to love the most, still appealed to me. But today I always felt that these two dishes tasted different. At first, I thought that Mom had put less seasoning today. So I joked, "Mommy, even if your precious daughter is back, you can't put less sugar." Mom looked at me with confusion. "No. These are the proportions you like the most." I wrote them down on my phone. There can't be a mistake. Was there something wrong with my sense of taste? After dinner, I sat on the sofa with my parents and watched TV together. Before I knew it, I fell asleep. At 9 o'clock in the evening, I woke up slowly on the sofa, seeing that my parents were still watching TV. I thought not much time had passed and that I had just dozed off. I got up and saw the blanket covering me. I picked up my phone and saw that it was already 9:25. There were a lot of work messages on my phone that hadn't been dealt with. But I didn't see any messages from him. Well, as a couple without an emotional foundation, there was no need to ask about everything. When my parents saw me wake up, they asked me to have some fruit. While eating, I heard them ask, "Honey, are you very tired at work recently?" I answered vaguely, "No, it's about the same as before." After hearing my answer, my parents didn't bring up this topic again. Time passed quickly. At 10 o'clock, I began to pack up my things and get ready to go home. Before leaving, my mother mentioned casually, "Honey, remember to have regular physical examinations." I replied perfunctorily, "Okay. Got it. Mommy. See you next week." Then I turned around and left, feeling the recent changes in my body. The next day, for the first time, I took a day off and prepared to go to the hospital for a comprehensive physical examination. I didn't tell anyone and went to the hospital alone. In the hospital, I was holding the checkup forms in my hand and waiting for the results when suddenly I saw him standing alone in the hall. I just got up and was about to ask him why he was at the hospital when I saw a girl bouncing out of the bathroom and hooking her arm around his. I sat down again and didn't move anymore, just quietly waiting for the results. When all the results came out, I stared at the ultrasound report in my hand in a daze. The report showed early intrauterine pregnancy. 9 weeks. Calculating the time, it seemed to be that one time. The time he had no memory of. That I got pregnant with our child. For I made an appointment for the obstetrics department for the next day. When I got home in the evening, he was already at home. He just looked at me and asked, "Just got off work?" My mind was still occupied by the fact that I had just found out about the baby during the day. So I didn't answer him. I walked straight into the room, not noticing him following me. Thus, I shut him outside the door. He didn't lose his temper either. Instead, he asked me very gently outside the door, "Honey, is there anything unhappy today?" I suddenly thought of the figures of him and that girl I saw at the hospital today. I got up and opened the door. Looking at him, he had a different temperament from other 30-year-old men. He still looked like a 20-year-old boy, with a pair of affectionate peach blossom-shaped eyes. Looking at me so quietly, I glanced at him. He was dressed the same as in the afternoon, and he hadn't even had time to take a bath and change. I asked him, "Why do you smell of alcohol today?" He was stunned for a moment, then held my hand with one hand. Good knows, I couldn't resist my colleagues, and was dragged to a drinking party. I silently withdrew my hand. "Well, go take a bath." Then I bypassed him and entered the study. I didn't want to be in the same room with him right now. I wanted to convince myself that it wasn't him, even if he had just told me what he had done in the afternoon. But thinking back to his clothes, I had to admit that it was him. I didn't want to be in the same room with him. When he was sound asleep, I quietly left the master bedroom and curled up in a corner of the living room sofa. I seemed to have the sense of security I had as a child. The next day, before he woke up, I had already set off for the hospital. In the consulting room, the doctor said, "This little one is quite energetic. It seems quite stable for now. You two should discuss whether to keep this child. If you want to keep it, remember to come for file building at 12 weeks. And remember to bring your husband then. If you don't want it, then make an appointment for an abortion as soon as possible." I opened my mouth, but the words "that my husband had no time" got stuck in my throat. How could he have no time? He was accompanying a young girl for an examination yesterday. After having lunch in the mall near the hospital, I went back home. When he saw me come home, he was obviously stunned for a moment. I didn't bother with his look anymore and went into the room by myself, took a shower, and lay down to sleep. When I was asleep, I had a dream. In the dream, We started from falling in love, had no contradictions, had a lovely daughter, and lived a happy life. When I woke up, the sun had already set. He had made dinner and was at the dining table. I was just about to call you. Come and have dinner quickly. I sat at the dining table, and we had nothing to say to each other. Remembering the doctor's advice in the morning and the agreement between the two of us, I began to test him. Thaddeus, let's have a child. He answered me without hesitation. Ophelia, we have an agreement. No children within 3 years. I pursed my lips and smiled. I just thought my colleague's child was cute and asked casually. He didn't answer any more. After the dinner incident, we didn't communicate all night. I was at my desk, dealing with the work I had missed during the 2-day leave. He was holding a book and a laptop, not knowing what he was recording. It should be preparing lessons. After all, he was an associate professor. The work efficiency tonight was surprisingly slow. The doctor's words and his indifference occupied my mind. I simply put down my work and went into the room to call my parents. When the call was connected, "Honey, why did you think of calling us today?" I tried hard to calm my emotions. "Mommy, there's nothing going on in the company recently. I want to stay at home for a few days." Mom should have sensed the change in my emotions. And she asked, "Did you quarrel with Thaddeus?" I replied, "No. I just miss Mommy." Does it mean that after getting married, I'm no longer my parents' precious daughter? Can't I stay at home? Mom laughed out loud. "You. Always so glib-tongued. If you want to come back home to live, just come. This will always be your home. And Mom and Dad will always love you." My tears slid down my face onto the bedsheet. I wiped my tears and said, "Then I'll come back soon." After that, I hung up the phone and started packing my luggage. He should have heard the commotion in the room. He walked to the door and asked, "Where are you going?" I replied indifferently, "Work has been less busy recently. I'm going to stay at my parents' for a few days." He just said, "Okay." I looked at him. "Thaddeus, don't you have anything to say?" Deep down, I wanted him to explain what happened at the hospital yesterday. But he just said, "I'll drive you there later." Okay. At 10 o'clock, his car stopped steadily in front of my parents' house. I picked up some of my clothes and my bag on my own, got out of the car, and walked into the house without looking back. When Mom and Dad saw me arrive, they asked, "Did Thaddeus drive you here?" "Yes." "Oh. Thaddeus didn't even come in to sit for a while. He has things to do." Dad was a bit angry. Always has things to do. His wife isn't as important as his things. I forced a smile. "It's okay. It's all for making money to support the family." Mommy, looking at me who was no longer as bright as before, asked worriedly, "Did you really not quarrel with Thaddeus?" I turned around and walked into the room. As I walked, I said in a flat tone, "I'm pregnant. But he doesn't want the baby. Don't call him to confirm. If he wanted this baby, I wouldn't be back here." Dad, who had just taken out his phone from his pocket, put it back again and stood nervously at the door and asked, "Then what do you think?" Mom gave him a wide-eyed look. "Abortion is very bad for a girl. Do you have the heart to let our daughter endure it?" Dad said, "It also depends on our daughter's will. If Thaddeus doesn't want it, at worst, I'll raise the baby. It's not like we can't afford to raise one more child." Hearing this, I showed the only sincere smile in these days. Yes, it's not like I can't afford to raise a child. 3 days later, I went back to our home with the divorce agreement. As expected, he wasn't at home, looking at the tidy room and the balcony without any clothes. I knew that he hadn't been at home last night. I called him, and he answered. "What's up, wife?" I said coldly. "When are you coming back?" "I'm on my way home." "Okay." 10 minutes later, I heard the sound of the door opening. I didn't turn around to look at him. He put down his car keys and looked at me and the divorce agreement on the table. What's this? The divorce agreement. Why? There's no emotional foundation. And there's someone else I like more. Okay. He didn't even look at the content of the agreement and signed it. I quietly looked at him. Maybe these were the last few times I would see him. He had the eyes that I liked the most. And his temperament also attracted me deeply. I recalled his tenderness that night again. I thought, maybe if I were honest with him, would the result be different? But thinking of his cold mention of that agreement, I picked up the divorce agreement, got up and left. At the door, I said, "See you at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon." Okay. 6. I didn't ask him why he agreed so readily. There were countless reasons to convince me that he would agree. Maybe it was the girl in the hospital. Or maybe someone else. I would never be his first choice. I laughed at myself knowing that I would never be his first choice. I still slowly sank into this love because of everything about him. Well, maybe divorce is also a kind of liberation. There will be no more moments of mental exhaustion haunting me. He and I just experienced a very absurd dream. And in the dream, we didn't have a happy ending. I hope we will never meet again in the next life. I received his message. Have you really thought it through? I didn't reply. He was like a liar, coaxing me to spread a huge lie with him, and then slowly making up for the mistakes we made together for the rest of our lives. From Saturday to Monday. For me, I experienced 3 long days. I regretted my choice of divorce countless times. I felt like I had fallen into an endless sea, constantly sinking and slowly drowning in it. I also told myself countless times, don't regret the decision you've already made. People who go back on their word are not worthy of love at all. But I am worthy of love. I had a dream. Maybe it was us from a parallel world in the dream. We also didn't end well. I believe. Maybe the result between him and me is fate's arrangement. We will both meet someone better. On the first day, I always checked my phone from time to time. But he didn't contact me. On the second day, I stopped looking at my phone. And he still didn't contact me. On the third day, I had no hope for him anymore. But he sent me a message. Is there anything at home that you want to take away? I'll bring it to you. Tears welled up in my eyes. He really doesn't have the slightest love for me. And he can't wait to get divorced. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I started to tidy myself up. I put on a makeup that he had never seen before. A different me. I hoped he would remember this wild and flamboyant me. Not the gentle and elegant me. I hoped he knew that I used not to be like when I was with him. 7. It was almost 3 o'clock. For this last meeting, I didn't want to be late. But the traffic was congested. For the next part of the journey, which usually took 3 minutes, it would take at least 15 minutes. I didn't ask the driver to stop the car. Instead, I told him that when we passed this congested section later, if it was safe, he could drive a bit faster because I was in a hurry. He asked me casually, "Are you going to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get married? Little girl? Why don't I see your boyfriend with you?" "I'm sorry, Uncle. I'm going to get divorced." I answered the driver while looking at the time on my phone. Finally, we passed the congested section. The driver said, "Little girl, getting married and getting divorced are not easy these days. Are you sure you don't want to think about it again?" I didn't answer. I clearly felt that the driver slowed down a lot, as if he wanted to persuade me again. Finally, we dawdled to the viaduct less than a few dozen meters away from the Civil Affairs Bureau. The driver said again, "Little girl, turn this corner and go down this viaduct, and you'll be at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Have you really thought it through?" I looked up in the direction of the driver. Through the driver's window, I saw Thaddeus waiting at the intersection. I didn't know if he had seen me. He probably hadn't. After all, he had been looking down, typing on his keyboard. I said to the driver, "Uncle, just let me off here. I'll walk the last few dozen meters myself. I'm running out of time." The driver seemed to want to persuade me again. I looked at the fare on the meter. scanned the QR code, and was just about to pay him when a speeding van, as if its steering wheel had lost control, rushed towards us crazily. The distance was getting closer and closer, but neither the driver nor I noticed. At the moment when I finished paying, our car was hit by a strong impact and overturned off the viaduct. At the moment when the car overturned, I saw a message from Thaddeus on my phone. I wanted to grab the phone floating in the air and let Thaddeus call 120 quickly to save me and the unborn child in my womb. But the car was falling very fast. After a loud noise, I closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, the front of the car had started to burn spontaneously, and there were a lot of people gathered around. I tried hard to open my eyes wide. I wanted to open the car door, but I couldn't stand up and couldn't open the door above my head. I wanted to move and change to a position that could protect the baby, but the searing pain made me unable to move. I heard the siren. I thought my hope had come. My eyelids were constantly drooping. I could no longer control myself and closed my heavy eyes. At Thaddeus' diary, Wednesday, June 12, 2019 today. I saw a girl on the campus forum. Many people confessed their love to her. I took a look at her photo. She was really cute. Sunday, July 21, 2019 today. On my way walking the dog, I saw the girl from the campus forum. She seemed to be walking with her family. Under the light, she seemed to be blessed by the gods. Friday, August 2, 2019 today. I saw her come to class. There were a few girls sitting next to her. I had never seen her before. Maybe she was auditing the class. However, she didn't listen carefully throughout the class, and didn't even look up at me once. Wednesday, December 25, 2019. I saw her in the school supermarket. There was a very tall boy beside her, but I didn't see his face clearly. They seemed to be a couple. I don't know what she saw in him. Sunday, May 10, 2020. The school was closed due to the epidemic. I haven't had classes for 4 months, and I haven't seen her either. I wonder how she is recently. Friday, July 24, 2020. Today is the graduation ceremony. As a counselor, I saw her in the crowd who was about to graduate. She was very beautiful and happy today. Tuesday, November 10, 2020. The next time I heard about her was actually in a former classmate's WeChat moments. She was sitting at the dining table with her parents. Bright and flamboyant. Very different from how she was in school. I heard that she could also play the piano. Unfortunately, my friend didn't record a video of her playing the piano. Thursday, December 17, 2020. Today, I was dragged by my colleagues to have a little drink. In a daze, I actually saw her, but she seemed unhappy, walking aimlessly on the street alone. I followed her as if possessed. I watched her enter the unit door of her residential area. Fortunately, she didn't notice me. Thursday, July 22, 2021. It's the graduation season again. Last year, I stood in the same place and watched her leave the campus. I wonder how she is this year. Tuesday, October 19, 2021. Today, I saw a video recorded by a friend of her playing the piano at a friend's wedding. The light always seems to shine on her. At that moment, it seemed that she was the only holy one in the world. Friday, December 10, 2021. Today, I heard that she was preparing to get married. I don't know if the man was the one I saw when she was about to graduate from college. Monday, January 24, 2022. She didn't get married and even started going on blind dates. Did she break up with him? Or were they never together? Saturday, February 5, 2022. I deliberately asked a friend to help me get to know her, even if it was just an opportunity to meet. Tuesday, February 22, 2022. Today was the day when I officially met her. I made a very clumsy self-introduction coldly. Hello, Thaddeus. She was stunned when she looked at me. I thought she recognized me, but she didn't. She said, "Hello, I'm Ophelia. Chairman.